Hey, what's going on, people? I'm Will Charlton. Welcome to another edition of Noteworthy in the NCAA, a weekly podcast here at the ETB Network, talking about the latest happenings across the college sports landscape. You can follow me on Twitter at WillCharltonH13. You can follow me on Instagram at WillCharltonTV. Make sure you follow us across all social media platforms at ETB Network. And also make sure you follow Forever Power 5, the podcast I'm a part of, across all social media platforms at FP5ETB. So let's get started here today talking about, and also you can watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. Let's get into it today. Going to be a bit of a shorter show today just because there's not a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, last week we recapped the first round of the college football playoff, and we kind of take a deep dive into the quarterfinal games, which will be taking place across Wednesday and Thursday on this week's edition of Forever Power 5, which comes out tonight. The video premiere comes out tonight at 8 Eastern on YouTube. So make sure you tune into that to watch our full breakdown of picks for this upcoming round of the college football playoff. And from there, make sure you tune in. It's a good episode, recap. We talk about the Pop-Tart Bowl, which I'll kind of dive more into that a little bit here shortly. We talk about Kyle Whittingham getting hired at Michigan, so I won't talk about that a crazy amount on here just because we really break that down on Forever Power 5. And then we also talk about the Notre Dame-USC rivalry going away. And one other thing that I will talk about here today is the ACC's new scheduling deal. We talk about it a little bit on the podcast as well, but I'll kind of really talk about it here after we break down some of the key bowl games which have taken place so far. So I think the biggest one that's probably happened to this point is the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which was just a phenomenal game between Georgia Tech and BYU. Georgia Tech was up 21-10 at one point in the game. The BYU reeled off 15 straight unanswered points after the second quarter. Georgia Tech was winning that game at halftime 21-10. And BYU would look like they might have been in dire straits in that situation, but then Bear Bachmeier and BYU just kind of shut down Haynes King and company and were able to win the Pop-Tarts Bowl 25-10. It was a really odd situation how the game ended because Georgia Tech had a huge play, Haynes King completing a massive pass down the field, which got them within the BYU 20-yard line with about, I think there was like 35, 40 seconds to go at this point. They had a 1st and 10, one timeout left. Georgia Tech goes for the end zone. There probably wasn't 40. There was probably like 25-ish seconds left, 25, 30. And they go for the end zone on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th down. And on the final 4th down, the ball is intercepted, and BYU seals the deal with that win. I think that Georgia Tech mismanaged that terribly. I mean, they mismanaged that clock awfully. You have one timeout left. Guess what? And also within the final 2 minutes of the game, the clock stops after a 1st down. So if you get those 10 yards, you're not only does the clock stop and you can spike the ball if you really need to, if you don't want to call the timeout in that situation, but you're also within the 10-yard line instead of within the 20-yard line now. So Georgia Tech not trying to actually get the 1st down, settling to try and go for the end zone on all 4 plays, I thought was dumb. I thought that didn't make any sense at all. They really sold out for the touchdown there. And look, if there was 10 seconds left, I get it. You have to take shots at the end zone. But there was 25 or 30 left on that 1st down. And you go for the end zone each play. I just don't really get what went into that decision. But regardless, it was a great game. The People's National Championship, always so much fun. I swear those Pop-Tart mascots, they are hilarious. I mean, their interactions all across the sideline all the time are just they're funny. I mean, they're really funny. So if you watch the Pop-Tart Bowl, it was a great game. Definitely one of the better games of bowl season thus far. And it was a lot of fun. Obviously, it's always a fun time to watch the Pop-Tart Bowl because in the 3 years it's happened now, it just feels like it gets what's the word? It feels like it just gets more entertaining is a good way to say it, I guess, each year. And this year, instead of just one edible mascot for the winner, they had 3 edible mascots. So it's always fun to kind of see the aftermath of the teams going to work on those edible mascots. So yeah, just that was a fun game. The Pop-Tarts Bowl, once again, BYU wins that one over Georgia Tech. Another crazy one was on Christmas Eve when Hawaii beat California 35-31. So get this. I don't know if any of you guys watched this game or not. It was kind of it wasn't late night, but it was a little bit of a later game because it was the Hawaii Bowl. Hawaii's quarterback got injured. He got injured on the final drive. The backup comes in and throws a dart down the sideline to deliver the game-winning score for Hawaii in that game. That was an unreal ending to that football game, and also really chippy at the end too. Rough scene there at the end. Just a huge brawl at the end of that game. It was pretty wild to see. But yeah, no, Hawaii came storming back. I want to say that Cal led that game 21-10, 21-7, something like that, maybe even 21-3. Cal had complete control of that game, but then Hawaii comes storming back and wins that game on their own field. Technically, they weren't the home team, so to say. I mean, actually, technically, funny enough, it did say California at Hawaii, which is true because it was at Hawaii's home stadium. So Hawaii wins, even though it's considered like a neutral site game. It was realistically a home game for Hawaii. But yeah, that was a crazy game. California just not being able to get the job done against Hawaii. That was a wild game if you guys watched that one. Minnesota, New Mexico came down to the wire. It went to overtime, actually. Minnesota scored a touch. It was 14-14 in overtime. Minnesota scored a touchdown. New Mexico had to settle for a field goal. So I will say this, though. New Mexico getting 9 wins this year. Huge credit to Jason Eck and company. New Mexico was probably the worst team in the FBS last year. I think they were probably like one of, if not the worst team across the entire FCS last year. And or FBS, sorry, FBS. And to turn around and just barely miss out on the Mountain West Conference Championship game because something didn't go their way in the final week. An incredible turnaround season for Jason Eck and company. He's really done a good job with that New Mexico program. It's pretty impressive to see what the Lobos did this year. The Mountain West came down to that computer mathematical situation where they had to pick 2 teams because there was like a 4-team tiebreaker and they couldn't decipher like which team had the edge or the over to get into the conference championship. So they chose Boise State and UNLV. And so New Mexico ended up getting kind of the short end of the stick there. But yeah, to have 9 wins for that program, Minnesota won, I believe it's 8th straight bowl game now, 9th straight, one of those 2. Longest current active streak in the entire FBS in terms of bowl wins belongs to Minnesota right now. It's a pretty wild stat. It's a fun sign to see that New Mexico is a decent program. But yeah, shout out to Minnesota, PJ Fleck and company getting the job done in that bowl game. East Carolina wins another bowl game back-to-back years against the power conference opponent. They beat NC State last year in a bowl game. This year they beat Pittsburgh 23-17 in the Military Bowl. So that was a good one. Military Bowl win to East Carolina. If you would have told me at the start of the season that Penn State and Clemson were playing in a bowl game, I'd be like, so one of the quarterfinals or semifinals, maybe national championship, possibly. No, you find out it's the Pinstripe Bowl. I would have probably laughed in your face because I picked Penn State and Clemson to win the Big Ten or ACC respectively preseason. Didn't go very well for me, unfortunately, but the fact that they played each other in the Pinstripe Bowl and both teams finished with a 7-6 record because Penn State dominated Clemson in that game 22-10. The score might not say it, but Penn State was just dominant especially on the defensive end. Cade Klubnik and company looked clueless out there. Also a wild situation because it was like really cold and it was snowing a little bit in New York City for that game. So yeah, Penn State gets the job done over Clemson 22-10 in a game where you would have thought that was a college football playoff type of situation early on in the season. It's so funny that those two teams actually ended up playing each other in a bowl game of all things, in the Pinstripe Bowl of all things. So Penn State gets the job done 22-10 over Clemson. The New Mexico Bowl between North Texas and San Diego State was wild. I mean, that was a wild game on Saturday. North Texas got it done 49-47. North Texas was kind of in control of the whole game. Like, they went up big early on. San Diego State just kind of clawed their way back into it. And ultimately, I think they had a situation, if not mistaken. I had it on, but I wasn't crazy tuned into it. If I'm not mistaken, they had a situation where they scored a touchdown but failed a 2-point conversion, I think. And then they just couldn't. They were down 16, I believe, and had to and missed out on the 2-point conversion. But the New Mexico Bowl goes to North Texas 49-47. North Texas, I believe that's their, what was that, their 11th win of the season. I remember seeing that. Let's see, North Texas 12th. So yeah, they won 12 games for the first time in program history. Very cool for North Texas. I'll tell you what, North Texas is going to have two key guys to watch out for in the transfer portal. Drew Mestemaker and Caleb Hawkins. Those two guys right there are going to be guys to watch out for in the transfer portal. Caleb Hawkins has been a dynamic running back. I mean, he has been unreal, not only in the backfield, but in the passing game. Caleb Hawkins is kind of like a do-it-all type of guy for North Texas, and Drew Mestemaker had a phenomenal freshman season as quarterback at North Texas. So that will be very interesting to see where those two guys end up going, because I bet they'll land at big programs. And then the most two recent bowl games, Virginia, they won their 11th game for the first time ever in program history. They got a job done against Missouri in the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl 13-7. So shout out to Virginia after losing the ACC championship game to Duke, who still plays in the Sun Bowl coming up. Virginia wins their 11th game of the first time ever in the program's history. So very cool for Virginia, 13-7 over Missouri. And then Houston was up, kind of controlled the game against LSU. Houston wins the Texas Bowl 38-35. Shout out to Houston for a very impressive season there. The Cougars were another terrible team in the FBS and at the power level, especially last year, and they've had a really nice turnaround. Connor Wigman has done a great job as quarterback for them, and Tanner Koziel, phenomenal tight end too. So Houston gets a job done against LSU 38-35 in the Texas Bowl, and there's still a lot more bowl games to go, and there's a lot of good ones coming up this week as well. Tomorrow, the Music City Bowl, Tennessee versus Illinois. That should be a fun one. The Alamo Bowl, USC TCU. And then on New Year's Eve, the ReliaQuest Bowl, Iowa Vanderbilt ranked matchup. The Sun Bowl, Arizona State Duke. The Citrus Bowl, which is a very good ranked matchup, Texas and Michigan. And then the Las Vegas Bowl as well, Nebraska and Utah. And then, of course, the night's capped off on New Year's Eve with the first matchup of the quarterfinals in the college football playoff, Ole Miss and Ohio State and Miami. That's the first matchup of the college football playoff quarterfinals. That's the Cotton Bowl. So Ohio State number 2 versus number 10 Miami. And then on New Year's Day, we got the Orange Bowl between Texas Tech and Oregon. We got the Rose Bowl between Indiana and Alabama. And we got the Sugar Bowl between Georgia and Ole Miss. So there's a lot more fun games to go in this college football season. And make sure to stay tuned with Forever Power 5 to be able to recap all of it. So it's been a lot of fun. And staying on top of the college football, the FCS National Championship is a week from today down in Nashville, Tennessee. It's going to be Illinois State and Montana State. Montana State, current number 2 seed in the FCS, and Illinois State is an unranked team. I guess technically they'd be number 17 if they were ranked, but this Illinois State team has been on a phenomenal run. I know if you guys regularly watch this show each week, I talk about Illinois State, I talk about Montana State, but this FCS National Championship is a week from today. I want to make sure I get the time right here. It is going to be on ESPN. I just got to make sure I tell you guys the correct time here. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 7:30 Eastern time, but let's see. Can't seem to find it right now, but anywho, trying to regardless, it's next Monday. I believe the time is if I just look at Montana State football, it should be pretty easy to find, but I'll tell you guys the time here in a second. I should have known this before hopping on the podcast. I apologize. 7:30 Eastern time on next Monday, January 5th in Nashville, Tennessee, Illinois State and Montana State. I believe last I checked, the Bobcats are 9.5-point favorites right now. It's about right to me. The Bobcats have won 13 straight games and have been just on an absolute tear lately. The game against Yale to begin the FCS playoffs is pretty interesting, but they've been on a roll. I mean, they handled Stephen F. Austin with ease, and they took care of their arch rival Montana after being down in the third quarter by 3 points. They scored the final 28 in the game. So they rolled past Montana. The score wasn't – I mean, it was a bit closer than the score indicated because I was there. I actually saw the game live. But, yeah, that was a phenomenal experience to be down in Bozeman, Montana for that. But, yeah, so the FCS National Championship should be a lot of fun. Illinois State's been a real pesky team. I bet they will give Montana State a game. But if I had to choose, I'm going with the Bobcats in this game. I think Illinois State's miracle run comes to a close in this game. It's been a phenomenal run for them, but I think Montana State's going to be a little too much to handle. The Bobcats are playing on a different level right now, and the Bobcats lost the national championship last year, so they got a bit of a chip on their shoulder to win it this time around. And last thing for the show today, the updated men's basketball KenPom rankings. There is no new AP poll for this week, at least yet. So usually that does come out on Mondays, so there might not be one this week because of New Year's or what it might be, but through the games played so far on this Monday, Michigan reigns number 1, Arizona's number 2, and keep in mind this is all because of the net rating on KenPom. If you want to check these out yourself, go to kenpom.com. Iowa State 3, Gonzaga 4, Purdue 5, Duke 6, UConn 7, Illinois after a massive win already on this Monday jump up to 8 now with a 10-3 record, and the throttling of Missouri last Monday in the annual bragging rights game. Illinois won that game by 40-plus points. I can't remember what the exact final score was, but it was an unbelievable. Yeah, Illinois won that game against Missouri 91-48. So 43-point victory in a rivalry game, an annual rivalry game, 91-48. Unbelievable. So, yeah, Illinois is now up to 8 in the KenPom rankings. Vanderbilt 9, Houston 10, BYU 11, Florida 12. Even though they have 4 losses, they're number 12. Louisville 13, Michigan State 14, Tennessee 15, Kansas 16, Alabama 17, Iowa 18, Kentucky 19, St. John's 20. And then the final 5 to round out the top 25, Texas Tech 21, North Carolina 22, Nebraska 23, Virginia 24, Villanova 25. And if you guys want to check these out yourself, like I mentioned, it's super easy to go to kenpom.com. It is kind of the best, it's sort of like the best encyclopedia to see where a team is at throughout a season. And the KenPom rankings are the true tell of how efficient, how good, how much the metrics like a team in a season. The KenPom rankings are really kind of the most true way to tell where a team is at and what they've shown in their games to prepare them for what could come down the line in a sense. And KenPom's usually very accurate about how teams are going to end up doing in March. So That's our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Noteworthy in the NCAA. Once again, I'm Will Charlton. Happy New Year to all of you. Wish you all the best in 2026. And we won't be back on next week, but the week after, we'll be back on for another version of this podcast. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.